Hey guys, I just wanted to share something with you. I'm doing some study through the book of Daniel right now, and there are many verses, many passages I really love from the book of Daniel. It's a very powerful prophetic book, but there's one verse in chapter 1 I want to share with you for you to pray over yourself. I think it can really bless you. I think it's a really necessary thing in this time. What it's from is Daniel chapter 1, and what was going on in Daniel 1 was that Daniel and his three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they were brought into the king's house, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. They were brought into the king's house and put under his Lav Hasalisim, the chief of the eunuchs, or the chief of the officers. And they were put under his instruction to learn to be wise men and counselors in the king's house. And God prospered them while they were there. But what happened was that they were young men at the time, by the way, very young men, probably teenagers, most likely. In the Hebrew, it's hayalidim. It means most likely young men, teenagers, lads. So what happened though is that the king had appointed to them, through the chief of the officers, the chief of the eunuchs, that they would eat from the king's portion of meat and from the king's portion of wine. They would drink of his wine. Now Daniel refused this because he wanted to keep the law of Moses. And what this has to do with is the fact that the king's meat, in many cases, was taken actually from sacrifices that the priests who serve in Babylon, not priests of God, not priests of Jehovah, but priests of the Babylonian gods, they would take the meat offered in sacrifice to the Babylonian gods, and the king would eat of that meat. And Daniel would not eat of meat sacrificed to other gods, to false gods, to devils. He also would not drink of the wine, because the wine in many cases would be poured out as a drink offering, a libation, to their gods as well, and so he wouldn't eat of it. As well as the fact that there's a strong possibility that some of the meat they were offering was from animals which are unclean. And so in keeping the covenant and being faithful to the covenant, Daniel determined, the Bible says he purposed in his heart, not to eat of the king's meat or to drink of his wine. But there's something very fascinating, because he asks the chief of the officers if he can not eat of it. He asks to be given permission not to eat of it. Not to eat of it. He asks for permission of this. Don't eat of it. But there's no guarantee the chief of the eunuchs will permit it for him. Now, of course, they enacted this test in which he would eat only vegetables for some time and drink water and see who came out stronger. The Jewish boys who did not eat of the king's meat and ate only pulse, vegetables, and water, or the other boys who would eat of the king's meat and drink of his wine. And it turned out that Daniel and his friends were found stronger. So as Daniel was faithful to the covenant of his God, God was faithful to him to help him. I'm going to show you this verse, though. I really love this verse. Very powerful verse. In Daniel chapter 1, I'm going to read this to you from, of course, my King James. Okay, I can't help it. It's my King James. I'm going to read this to you. This is Daniel chapter 1, verse 9. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. Now that was necessary because for Daniel's request not to eat the king's meat, to be taken seriously, for him to be exempted, him and his friends to be exempted from the portion of the king's meat, they would need favor with him. But I'm going to read this to you from Hebrew, actually. I'm going to read this to you from the Hebrew text, and then I'm going to give you Young's literal translation that helps to bring out some of the real meat of it, some of the real force of the passage. I'm going to read this to you right now. The Hebrew says this, okay, listen. Vayatein ha-Elohim et Daniel lechesed ve'larachamim lafnei sal hasalisim. Okay, so that means given by God to Daniel was for chesed, that is grace, kindness, and for rachamim, which is tender love, mercies, in the presence of the chief of the eunuchs. Now I'm going to read you Young's literal translation and show you how he puts it. It says, and God giveth Daniel for kindness, and for mercies before the chief of the eunuchs. I love that. By the end of the chapter, when they stand before the king, it says that they were 10 times wiser. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. It says that they were 10 times better, 10 times wiser than any of the other officers in the king's house, any of his other wise men, Chaldeans, soothsayers, etc. So God is able to give wisdom and favor, wisdom and favor. Pray for these two things. I think in this time we all need God to give us kindness, to give us favor, and to give us affection, to give to people to have a tender heart towards us in this time. in the time that we're living in, when we need God's help to make the right decision, to be faithful to the covenant. So for the sake of being faithful to the covenant of our God, let's ask God, as Daniel did, God is able to give you kindness and mercies before people in authority whom you need from. And he is able to make you wise 10 times more than the people of the world. You can have answers that they don't have. Pray for these things. I hope this blesses you. Thank you, guys. Grace and peace.